I have a rage quitter this week.
Mm.
His name or her name is Dragonasmodius, and it was a Rashid player. And man, how do you play one of the best characters in the game, and then also when someone's about to beat you, rage quit? How do you do that?
It's called privilege, John. It is the privilege that to deny you from your wins, either through the gameplay or just through if you actually somehow manage to outplay them, which is almost impossible, to deny you that pleasure still. So that is exactly what you would expect from a Rashid player, but maybe
Those,
not. So
those
Bitch ass rage quitter.
of the week.
darn Rashid players. Save, of course, for JB, whom we know personally and
oh,
who's a
JB's
good guy.
awesome. He's a yeah. There are a few good JB players. I was gonna say a few good Rashid players. JB is one of them. He's actually really awesome, and he owns all the Rashid privilege he's got. And again, if you own it, if you're like, hey, you know what, I play X character, and X character can do this, this, and that, basically the exact opposite of Demon Curse, you're okay in our book. So. Yeah.
Love you, Demon Curse. Don't ever change. We appreciate
I
you.
love him too. He's great. It's like he actually I will genuinely read his comments, just be like, what kind of like cami filter did you put everything through today to like make this come out cami? Like I swear he's got like a forehead tattoo that just says like cami on that, or cami rules or something like. And if he doesn't, I'm gonna be disappointed. But anyway,
And a
you know,
dive
John.
kicking cami tramp stamp. Okay, so by the way, I set you up perfectly there to say, well, last week we did a segment all about the psychology of rage quitting, which I will say it's up. Where am I? It's up there. I don't know. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's right. It's up there in the
something like
corner
that.
right
I'll
now.
point
You
in
can
the right
click on
direction.
that and save it for after this segment. Okay, so what's the first thing we want to talk about this week? Oh, I know. It is tips from how to get from bronze to silver. I got three of them. Now, I say bronze to silver because that's where I think the majority of people that are looking for this kind of content or looking for this kind of help are at, and the kind of the gap that they're trying to make it across. But hear me clearly when I say this applies to silver, to gold, to platinum, to diamond, to master, to grandmaster. I'm currently a grandmaster, and I can tell you that I practice these things, and that having put them into the forefront of my practice routine in recent months, I have seen very clear improvements because of them. These are things that, just like if you're playing basketball, you shoot your free throws even though you've made a free throw before, even though you understand the concept of free throws pretty good. It doesn't matter. You need to keep your chops sharp, and these things are very simple and I think often overlooked. And you fix this stuff, and man, you will skyrocket. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like too good to be true, but you will climb through the ranks, and it doesn't matter if you're in bronze. It doesn't matter if you're in silver. It doesn't matter if you're in diamond. You can get better at this stuff, and if you do, you will start to see some win streaks, and you will start to see some rank ups. And so the first one of these, actually,
And I just want to mention this because I've seen some of our commenters on the YouTube, on our website and other stuff, and just say, hey, I've been stuck in silver for a year or two and stuff, and it's like, yes. And what the most important thing here is that you make changes to grow from that,
Mhm.
and that's what John's going to outline here is like, hey, these are new things to implement, or you might know about them, but like implementing them and really diving into them hardcore, it makes a difference. It will help get you out of those ranks. It's not the only thing. There might be problems like as an individual you have that we can't pinpoint, but these concepts are really, really, really important. I've had to revisit these a lot with learning a brand new character. It's like, oh man, like here's the 101 basic combos. Like I'm still like, even to this day, I'm Grandmaster still with Rose, and I'm struggling with some of my crush counter punishes. And those are like some of the things that you usually work out first handful of months of playing a character. Well, I'm still in the first handful of months of playing my character, and I haven't gotten all my crush counter punishes down yet because I got 50 of them. It's actually kind of a nice problem to have, but anyway, John, back to you. I just wanted to set that up, that like, don't get too frustrated with the stuff we're saying. Like, we're here to help. Like, we really genuinely want to help people, and just gradually work your way through this stuff. It's that's what it's there for.
Oh yeah, and crush counter punishes and knowing how to do them, that's absolutely a thing. It's not one of the things on today's list, but I hear you loud and clear that I've missed many a punish or not known. I've realized I'm playing a character, a new character, and I just didn't know what to do when a crush counter situation presented itself. But so the first one in here, well, I want to preface it all with normally we go to the neutral. We go to with punishing and keeping like standing your ground and poking and confirming and things like that. And yes, that is one of the most foundational things that you can do in a Street Fighter game. It is very important, but it is the means to getting to the big damage, to getting to the advantageous situations. And that's, you can see why it would be important. And at the highest levels of play, you're not getting to those situations without traversing the neutral like an expert. Because someone like Shan or Fujimura or Daigo or whomever, they're not going to give you any free ins and or many free ins or many free opportunities. So you have to manipulate your way there through the neutral. But man, if you're in silver, if you're in diamond, if you're in master, you're going to get a lot more opportunities for free from your opponents or for less than what you would have to do against these other higher level players. And so when I say that to say, yes, neutral is important. Yes, you should practice it. But if you were to compare it to something like basketball, neutral would be like your ball handling and your ability to create a lane to get to the hoop. But it doesn't mean diddly squat if once you get there, you can't dunk the ball or you can't make the layup or you can't shoot the open shot. You have to be able to make the basket to begin with. And that's where I'm going to start with this is actually taking advantage once you're there in these scenarios where you are at advantage. And so practicing, this is something that's so basic, but so important. Practicing meaty timings, just manually timed meaty moves on your opponent's wake up is, how many times have you gone for pressure on your opponent's wake up and they woke up, they counter hit you, and then into a combo, into V-trigger activation, into some kind of mixy-uppy reset, into stun, into you're dead. And it was all because you mistimed a meaty. That's happened to all of us, right? I mean, I assume it's happened to you, John,
Oh, right.
in the last, 2 sessions you played.
Pretty much like how many times am I not botching a meaty timing basically,
Yeah.
And I missed one of them and I'm pretty upset with myself, and there it is. So
it's hard to do in this game. Like, and it's so important. It's important in most fighting games, but it's especially a huge part of Street Fighter V. I think that's undeniable. And of course, I'm meaning when you get someone knocked down with something like a sweep, where you have the time to actually apply pressure. And imagine it this way. What if you could just flip a switch and every single time you were in this scenario where you mean to apply pressure on your opponent's wake up, you perfectly time it? What if? How many rounds? How many matches? How many sets? How many tournaments would you have won if you just had that on lock? Now, sure, you're going to get woke up DP'd sometimes. That's part of the game. But if you didn't ever get woke up counter hit when you didn't mean to, or when you didn't leave that open as an option, oh my gosh, the increase that you can make is drastic. And so the way to practice this is fairly simple. You go into the training mode and pick an opponent that has a 3-frame jab or a 3-frame move that they can wake up and do. Set them to do that. And then set them to do random wake ups, which means they can either not wake up quickly at all, they can do a wake up back roll, or they can do a quick get up. Now you have to then knock them down with something like a sweep and then practice whatever your move is to put pressure on them as they wake up, your meaty option. Practice with the different timings, not knowing when it's going to happen. And I have some footage that I already recorded to put up here during this segment as examples. You'll see who practice this stuff fairly regularly, don't even get it every time. Because especially characters like Zeku who have these, I know that they said they fixed it, and I'm sure they did, but like there's some weird animations when people wake up and you can't really tell visually very effectively, or it's like they seem a little different from the rest of the cast as to when their invisible hurt box is actually manifested or not. But having this locked down is so important, and it's something that I don't think many people do spend much time practicing. And you'll find, go into training mode and see how many times you miss it, because every time you missed it and they woke up and jabbed you and they got counter hit, think about what that means in a real match. It's like there's a lot of ground to be gained here. So first one, work on your meaty timings, your manual meeting times.
And one of the easiest ways you can do to find what meaty buttons you should be using is go in and look at the frame data. And if you see a move has 3 active frames or more, the active column is a really important part of this. If it has 3 active frames or more, that should be a good meaty button for you. Anything more than 3 is phenomenal, but 3 is usually kind of like the sweet spot. Most moves I think are like kind of 2 active frames offhand. And I mean, you can do that like with a 2-frame active move, but you really want like 3 or more is really what you want to do. So.
All right. So the second tip I have is similar to the first, but it has to do with the specifics of your setups. And this is often also meaty timings. It can also be sort of like a resets, but even then you're dealing with meaties most of the time. And that is when your character gets particular hits, usually your bread and butter, you'll have scenarios where you can knock someone down and then it's like framed perfectly, mathematically, you can apply pressure and have them in certain situations where that you are at a very high advantage. And so with Nikali, this is something, obviously the character that I play, this is something that I've been working with since the very beginning. This is like day 2. You know, you learn how to do a fireball and an uppercut and stuff, and then you kind of learn your setups. And I can tell you, again, I played this game for a couple of years, not spending a ton of extra time specifically focused on training this. And I was noticing that in my routine setups, which is his target combo into V skill 1 ground pound, double forward dash. When he does that, depending on how the opponent wakes up, he has some airtight, frame perfect scenarios where the onus is on them to defend against them, but he's got a great advantage. If they back roll, he can command grab, or he can do a medium button, and it's very meaty. But if they quick rise, he has to do a jab, or else he's going to get hit. And to be able to see this very regular scenario that happens in virtually every round that Nikali plays, it's not all that easy. And something that I found was that when I took this into training mode and I had my opponent set to randomly do one of these wake ups, and I would try just to be able to react and to whichever one they did and set my setup both do the right route and do it airtight. I found that my natural feeling, my personal like radar for this was slightly off. If I was hitting someone in an actual match, it was because they were late, because I felt like the actual window was a little bit later than it actually was. And when I took it into training mode, I found that I was getting counter hit almost every time by the computer that was just, robotically doing the wake up jab exactly at the same time every time. And I had to adjust what it felt like to my fingers for this to work. And you know what, sure enough, I do this. I spend about an hour over a couple of different sessions, and I don't want to burn yourself out, but a couple of different sessions, spend an hour, and applying this and seeing it work in the actual gameplay when you're actually playing online or with friends or locally or whatever is really satisfying. And it's, again, it's not glamorous. It's a very fundamental routine. Like you learn it on day 2 and you just kind of file it away as part of your arsenal. But man, understanding these things and having them airtight is the difference between rounds. And again, imagine if you could have this airtight every single time, how many more rounds, matches, tournaments would you win? It's a lot. So, I have some footage up here so you can see in the Nikali example how to do it, how to set things up with the training dummy and whatnot. And if you don't know what your character's is, there's a lot of resources on YouTube. You can go around and people have put out bread and butters. They've put out bread and butters, by the way, being the go-to routine sequences that your character does in certain scenarios, like the routine punish, things along those lines. And you can really find what your best optimal routes and setups are. So know your setups, of course, and then make them airtight by training with them. And again, these things are not things where you have to be like, all right, now I'm going to spend an hour in training mode doing this and then an hour in training mode practicing manual timed meaties. No, but while you're waiting for a ranked match, set one of these scenarios up and play these little games where you see how many times in a row you can make these things work versus how many times did you get hit and therefore maybe even lost the round because of it, especially if you're playing against a V trigger G or someone like that. And then the final tip that I have is I've said this before, but it's so important I'll say it again. How many times are you missing anti-airs in your if you go back and you watch your replays? How many times did you have the opportunity to DP and you didn't do it, or you were late or whatever?
I'm feeling personally freaking assaulted
Attacked?
with this. Oh man, it is a nightmare. This is one of the things I hate looking at in replays the most But I've also like playing Rose and playing Monat, your anti-airs have to be on point. I don't want to hype it up too much, but I probably pound for pound with Monat, I think I had the best anti-air game in Street Fighter V. I was better than Sako, better than Infiltration. I was really good at anti-airing and doing it within threading the needle and stuff, because I played against Abigail, played against Nikali. I had to learn to anti-air really, really, really well, and I'm more of a neutral based player. Infiltration's more of a keep away. Sako's more of a setup combo kind of person. I'm more of a neutral based player, so anti-airs are extremely important to how I play. And even then, I go back and watch my own footage, and I'd be like, my timing's just like I'm trading a lot, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it's just like, so it kind of doesn't matter how good you are, so to speak, with anti-airs. Like there's always room for improvement there. And in this game, the reward for jumping in is just so huge. And so just taking an extra 5 minutes to stick, Ryu or someone else as a training dummy and jump forward and just really work on your spacing and timing, it's really helpful. And it's just something I can't recommend highly enough.
It's one of those things that it's a little bit harder to try to recreate this in training mode, because it's really like a reaction based on you not knowing when it's coming, and like you can kind of set that sort of a thing up if you maybe put a couple of different scenarios, recorded scenarios, and you don't know which one's coming, and you try not to pay attention to the big obvious number in the middle of the screen that tells you which one's coming. But really it's the process that really helped me here was I knew that I wasn't getting as many as I wanted to, which is all of them, right? Like, again, imagine if you anti-aired every single time you could, how different of a game that would be. But I knew that I could improve this, because we all can. And I was really feeling it, like I was frustrated because so many times I was missing opportunities, and the sway that comes from missing a jump in or getting a jump in is so huge. Even when they're blocked, the gain that you get from jumping in and your opponent blocking is still really good in this game. And so I did go into training mode, and I did do a little bit of, have characters jump and just, again, get the feel for it. And then one of the things you can do is, depending on your character, Nikali's rush down, right? So you have him in the corner a lot. And a lot of times there will be neutral jumps there, especially because he has a command grab. So again, I don't know how many characters this applies to as much, but even like when you tune your anti-airs enough, and you focused on them enough so that they become second nature, even when an opponent like neutral jumps in your face, you'll have the ability to anti-air DP them, and that's really good. So I set up a few things, but really I don't think that was really where my progress came from. One, the thing that you want to do is make sure that you're not over committing to things in the neutrals so that you have the opportunity to anti-air. And I don't mean just fireballs. Fireballs are, I think, the most obvious thing that people are jumping over. But it's also bigger normals that are just heavy commitments, that if you were to throw this normal out and someone jumps, you're not going to be recovered in time to deal with them coming in. And they're either going to have to block, or you're going to take a full jump in. So maybe you're committing a little bit too much in neutral, and that's something to maybe pay attention to. Maybe slow it down a little bit and be ready for these jump ins a little more often. But also go into casual. And so not ranked. I mean, you can do it in ranked if you're crazy and you don't mind losing that sweet LP that's identity and character defining. But go into casuals and play a game where you're paying more obvious attention, and with your focus overly on making sure you have anti-airs, right? It's like, it's not about winning or losing. It's about making sure you don't get jumped in on. And for you, a win is you don't get jumped in on. And maybe you're playing in a slightly different way, where all you're trying to do is goad your opponent into jumping. Now, you can't get too mechanical here, because if they sniff this out, then there's probably going to be a really easy counter to what you're doing, and then they're just going to roll you over, and you're not going to really get to practice what you're trying to do here. But you can make an effort to set your opponent up to do more jump-ins and to have that honed in ability. And your brain, the more you do it successfully, your brain will start to make those those pathways to your fingers, and you'll start to do it more and more without thinking about it. And maybe you have a command anti-air, maybe you have an invincible uppercut, whatever your most effective one is. And by the way, some characters have both, and many characters that have DPs have both. You should probably be doing DPs more often. And practice it this way, and you can always do more. There's crosscut DPs and such for people that are jumping over you. This is a very simple, very go-to, obvious kind of thing that happens in virtually every round, and yet it's something that, like those free throws, you should practice virtually every time you sit down to play Street Fighter. So nothing fancy.
Tokido got to this part of the video and said, "That's what I need to do with anti-airs." And there it is. So clicking like right now, I can see it. So.
Yes, and if you want to be like Tokido, you should click like too. And hey, leave a comment while you're doing it.